Hi everyone, it's me Heather and welcome to Wednesday's Folk Tales. I hope you are all well. I know I owe you a big apology for Monday and I know it sounds a bit crazy but I'm going to tell you what happened. I had a bit of a busy day on Monday and I thought I'd turned off all the notifications on my phone. So I started making a video for you, and halfway through I got 2 or 3 dings on my phone that were that loud it would have blown your eardrums. So I had to stop filming, stop being angry at myself because I thought I'd turned everything off, and then start again. And by the time I was ready to, I was about 5 minutes away from finishing, and then my phone rang. And it was one of those, spam phone calls from, people who just get your number, even though you're ex-directory. They always manage to get your phone number from somewhere. And it was someone wanting to know if I'd had an accident or what have you in the past few years. And I must admit, I shouted and I said, if you don't get off my phone, you'll have an accident. So I was a little bit annoyed. Then I had to do a FaceTime with my friend Erin, and I'll explain why that was in a minute. By the time I'd done that with her, my husband had come home from work. It was time to catch up with him in his day. And then obviously after that, it was chilling time a bit with him, then getting dinner ready and what have you. So I thought, right, I know what I'll do. When he's going off to bed, because he always goes in earlier than I do, I'll start the video then. And it was about 5 minutes before he was getting ready for bed, and I started feeling violently ill. And I mean tummy-wise. And it was horrible. Just these really, really strong waves of nausea, one after another. And I sat with a bowl in front of me and waited, and I'm very glad to say that nothing happened. But the nausea went on for about half an hour. And my husband looked at me, he said I'd got a funny colour, I looked a bit grey. He said my forehead was very clammy and I just felt horrible. I ended up going to bed with him at the same time. And I didn't get up until this morning at 6:30. I spent all day yesterday in bed feeling like I'd been hit by a 10-ton truck. So today, Monday wasn't great. Yesterday was worse, and it was a case of making myself get up today. And I've just slowly got through today as best I can. So I must admit, I'm very cynical, but I was going to make a video about the rewired soul and his latest antics on Monday. But 3 times I tried to make that video and 3 times I was stopped. And I don't know about you, but I think that's just more than coincidence. I don't know why I was stopped making a video about him, because I certainly don't intend to stop. If he starts any of his nonsense, I am not going to stop. If he just happens to cough the wrong way, no, that's just whatever. But if he picks on somebody or starts something dangerous, then yes, I will have something to say, because the bigger voices in our community have stopped talking about him. And he's going to take that as meaning, well, they don't care about me anymore. So nobody really cares about me anymore. But it's down to people like myself and anybody else who's willing to join with me, to make videos, to call him out, to tell people that he's dangerous. Because what I was going to talk about, apart from a couple of things that he's done that I think are horrible, his subscription numbers are going back up again. And I'm just incredulous at that. I just can't get my head around that. So, but I don't understand why I was stopped. And I was. And I wasn't happy about it. Anyway, I just want to get into this quickly before I start your story for tonight. Apart from Yom Tov, and I hope everybody is having a fantastic day, evening, night, wherever in the world you are. I hope you're having a wonderful time. My friend Erin and I go back a long way on Twitter. She's a lovely girl. She's from Alberta in Canada, and that makes her 7 hours behind me. Well, one of the things I was thinking about was what I could do with Mondays, and I really wasn't quite sure what to do about that. But this is what I wanted to talk to you about on Monday gone, was I wanted to ask you how you felt about us having live streams on a Monday. Erin will help me with the technology side of it. She knows all about that. I don't. About getting Google Hangouts up and running, and then inviting all you guys into, if you want to join in with the live stream. She came up with the name of Across Ponds and Prairies, because to her, I'm across the pond and she lives in a prairie. So is that something that appeals to you, or would you like to have a live stream on a Monday? I was thinking of doing them at, say, between 10 and 11 p.m. my time, which would make it, I think, if it was 11 o'clock, it would make it 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And then it would be 3 o'clock, I think, Pacific Standard Time. And then wherever else it would happen to fall. I'm sorry, I'm not really up with the time zones. But if you think Mondays would be good for live streams, then what do you think? Should we have a live stream on a Monday? And, I am determined to be there. This is something that I'm very excited about, because for me, it means I can connect with you in real time. It means I can talk to you and say hello and not just answer you in comments. When you're there, I can actually say, hi, how are you? It's lovely to be able to talk to you in real time. So it will be great for me. I'm hoping that you agree. If you all say no, it's not something that you'd be interested in, then we just go back to the drawing board and think about something else. But I know Erin's very excited about it. She's very experienced in live streams herself. So I'd be looking to her to guide me. I think I'd probably be ending up doing a lot of the talking. And I mean, she would obviously like to come in and talk as well. We sort of like be each other's co-anchor, like you have on news programs. So that's something that I would really like you to think about. I'm going to announce it on Twitter as well. It's just so that the Twitter people know, and that obviously you will know. And just let me know if you think it would be a good idea. And if you do, if you could let me know in the comments, please. And then I'll ask the Twitter lot to let me know over there on Twitter. And if it's a go, it will start Monday the 15th of July. And it'll be between, more than likely, 11 o'clock my time, so it'll be 6 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. And if we have it for about an hour and a half, and then that gives a chance for everybody to pop in. So, do you think that might be a goer for you? If that's something that you would like, then it's really important. Please let me know in the comments. And I just want to thank you all again for supporting each other. And like I said, please talk to each other in the comments, because it's great when you do that. And I love it when you are all supportive of each other. And you're really, really very supportive of me. And thank you so much to everybody who sent me messages asking where I was on Monday. I'm extremely grateful to all of you for caring about me that much. It means more to me than you'll ever know. Right, I've spent 10 minutes talking to you, which is a little bit longer than I expected. Tonight, as you know, the story for this evening is Snow White. So, would you please sit back, relax, and welcome to your Wednesday folktale, which is by the Brothers Grimm, and it's Snow White, with ad-libs from me, if they happen to be, appropriate. And it's again from Maria Tatar's Classic Fairy Tales. That's what it's called, the Classic Fairy Tales. I've taken it from here. Once upon a time in the middle of winter, when snowflakes were falling from the sky like feathers, a queen was sitting and sewing by a window with a black ebony frame. While she was sewing and looking out of the window, she pricked her finger with a needle, and 3 drops of blood fell onto the snow. The red looked so beautiful against the white snow that she thought to herself, "If only I had a child as white as snow, as red as blood, and as black as the wood of the window frame." Soon thereafter, she gave birth to a little baby girl who was as white as snow, as red as blood, and as black as ebony, and she was called Snow White. The queen died after the child was born. Right, I just want to have a quick aside here. How can you have a child that's white, red and black? Now, I don't know whether the Brothers Grimm were being sort of like all-inclusive back in the day, but the stories that I grew up with were that her skin was as white as snow, her lips were as red as blood, and her hair was as black as ebony. So to have a child red, white and black, was she striped? This is something that we're never going to know. But it's just something that popped into my head. I digress. A year later, the king married another woman. She was a beautiful lady, but proud and arrogant, and couldn't bear being second to anyone in beauty. Jacqueline Hill. She had a magic mirror, and when she stood in front of it and looked at herself, she would say, "Mirror, mirror on the wall, who is the fairest of them all?" And the mirror would reply, "Oh, Queen, you are the fairest of them all." Then she was satisfied, for she knew that the mirror always spoke the truth. Well, Snow White was growing up and becoming more and more beautiful, and when she was 7 years old, she was as beautiful as the bright day and more beautiful than the queen herself. And one day the queen asked the mirror, "Mirror, mirror on the wall, who's the fairest one of all?" And the mirror replied, "My queen, you are the fairest one of all, but Snow White is as 1,000 times more fair than you. Oh yes." When the queen heard these words, she trembled and turned green with envy. From that moment on, she hated Snow White, and whenever she set eyes on her, her heart turned as cold as stone. Envy and pride grew like weeds in her heart. They'd obviously never heard of weed killer. Day and night, she never had a moment's peace. One day, she summoned a huntsman and said, Take the child out into the forest. I don't want to have to lay eyes on her ever again. You must kill her and bring me back her lungs and liver as proof of your deed." I thought it was a heart you had to bring back. Oh, never mind. Well, the huntsman obeyed, and took Snow White out into the woods. But just as he was pulling out his hunting knife and about to take aim at her innocent heart, she began weeping and pleading with him. "Alas, dear huntsman, spare my life. I promise to run into the woods and never return." Snow White was so beautiful that the huntsman took pity on her and said, "Oh, just run away, you poor child. The wild animals will devour her before long," he thought to himself. He felt as if a great weight had been lifted from his heart, for at least he didn't have to kill her. Well, just then a young boar ran past him, and the huntsman stabbed it to death. Poor boar. He took out the lungs and the liver and brought them to the queen as proof that he'd murdered the child. The cook was told to boil them in brine, and the wicked woman ate them up, thinking she had eaten Snow White's lungs and liver. Ew. The poor child was left alone in the vast forest. She was so frightened that she just stared at all the leaves on the trees and had no idea what to do next. She started running and raced over sharp stones and through thorn bushes. Wild beasts darted at her at times, but they did her no harm. She ran as far as her legs could carry her. When night fell, she saw a tiny little cottage and went inside to rest. Everything in the house was tiny and indescribably dainty and spotless. There was a little table with 7 little plates on a white cloth. Each little plate had a little spoon, 7 little knives, and 7 little forks, and 7 little cups. Against the wall were 7 little beds in a row, each made up with sheets as white as snow. Snow White was so hungry and thirsty that she ate a few vegetables and some bread from each little plate and drank a drop of wine out of each little cup. She didn't want to take everything away from one place. And later she was so tired that she tried out the beds, but they just didn't seem to be the right size. The first was too long, the second too short, but the 7th one was just right, and she stayed in it. Then she said her prayers and fell fast asleep. Well, after it was completely dark outside, the owners of the cottage returned. They were 7 dwarfs. We can't call them dwarves anymore. You've got to call them little people, haven't you? Or is it height challenged? I'm not sure, but I can't say height challenged. It is the Brothers Grimm. They spent their days in the mountains mining ore and digging for minerals. They lit their 7 little lanterns and the cottage brightened up, and then they saw that someone had been there, for some things were not the way they'd left them. The first one asked, "Who's been sitting in my little chair?" And the second asked, "Who's been eating from my little plate?" And the third asked, "Who's been eating my little loaf of bread?" And the fourth asked, "Who's been eating from my little plate of vegetables?" And the fifth asked, "Who's been using my little fork?" And the fifth asked, "Who's been cutting with my little knife?" And the 7th asked, "Who's been drinking from my little cup?" God, the North asked a lot of questions. The first one turned around and saw some wrinkles on his sheets and said, "Who climbed into my little bed?" The others came running and each shouted, "Someone's been sleeping in my bed 2 times 6. Oh, when the 7th dwarf looked at his little bed, he saw Snow White lying there, fast asleep. He shouted to the others, who came running and were so astonished that they raised their 7 little lanterns to let the light shine on Snow White. "My goodness, oh my goodness," they exclaimed. "What a beautiful child." They were so delighted to see her that they decided not to wake her up and let her continue sleeping in the little bed. The 7th dwarf slept for 1 hour with each of his companions until the night was over. Well, in the morning, Snow White woke up, and when she saw the dwarfs, she was frightened. But they were friendly and asked, "What's your name?" "Eater of food and drinker of wine and stealer of somebody's bed for the night." I ad-libbed that, by the way. "My name is Snow White," she replied. "How did you get into our house?" said the dwarfs. Then she told them how our stepmother had tried to kill her, and that the huntsman had spared her life. She'd run all day until she had arrived at their cottage. The dwarfs told her, "If you keep house for us, cook and clean, make the beds, wash our clothes, sew, knit, keep everything neat and tidy. God, I don't ask for much. Then you can stay with us and we'll give you everything you need." That's fair enough. "Yes, with pleasure," Snow White replied, and she stayed with them. She kept house for them, and in the morning when they went up to the mountains in search of minerals and gold, in the evening, by the time they returned, the dinner had to be ready for them. Since the girl was by herself during the day, the good dwarfs gave her a strong warning. "Beware of your stepmother. She'll know soon enough that you're here. Don't let anyone in the house." Well, after the queen had finished eating what she thought was Snow White's lungs and liver, and she had them with onions, because I think it's the only way to eat them. If you're going to eat liver, you've got to eat it with onions, don't you think? She was sure that she once again wanted to know that she was the fairest in all the land. So she went to the mirror and said, "Mirror, mirror on the wall, who's the fairest of them all?" And the mirror replied, "Well, in this here castle, dearest queen, you are the fairest. But little Snow White, what plans to stay with the seven dwarfs far, far away, is now the fairest ever seen in the world." When the queen heard this, she was horrified, because she knew that the mirror couldn't tell a lie. Well, she realised the huntsman had deceived her, and that Snow White must be alive. Duh. She thought long and hard about how she could kill Snow White. Unless she herself was the fairest in the land, she would never be able to feel anything but envy. Finally, she came up with a plan. After staining her face and dressing up as an old peddler woman, she was completely unrecognisable. She travelled beyond the 7 hills to the 7 dwarfs in that disguise. Then she knocked on the door and called out, "Pretty wares for a good price." Snow White peeked out of the window and said, "Good day, old woman. What do you have for sale?" "Nice things, pretty things," she replied. "Stay laces and all kinds of colours." And she took out a lace and silk woven of many colours. "I can let this woman in," Snow White thought to herself, and she unbolted the door and bought the pretty lace. "Oh, my child, what a sight you are. Come, let me lace you up properly." Snow White wasn't the least bit suspicious. She stood in front of the old woman and let her put on the new lace. The woman laced her up so quickly and so tightly that Snow White's breath was cut off, and she fell down as if dead. "So much for being the fairest of them all," she said, and hurried away. Well, not much later in the evening, the 7 dwarfs came home. When they saw their beloved Snow White lying on the ground, they were horrified. She didn't move in the slightest, and they were sure she was dead. They lifted her up, and when they saw that she'd been laced too tightly, they cut the lace in two. Snow White began to breathe, and little by little she came back to life. When the dwarfs heard that what had happened, they said, the old peddler woman was none other than the wicked queen. Beware, and don't let anyone in unless we're at home. When the wicked queen returned home, she went to the mirror and asked, "Mirror, mirror on the wall, who's the fairest of them all?" The mirror replied as usual, "Oh, here we go again. Here you're the fairest, dearest queen, but little Snow White, what plans to stay with the 7 dwarfs far, far away, is the fairest in the land over there. We told you that before, and we'll tell you it again now. All right, missus?" The blood froze in her veins when she heard those words. She was horrified, for she knew that Snow White was still alive. Darn it and dash it. "But this time," she said, "I will dream up something that will destroy you." Using all the witchcraft in her power, she made a poisoned comb. She then changed her clothes and disguised herself as another old woman. You know, she's giving us older women a hard time. It's not really fair, is it? Once again, she travelled beyond the 7 hills to the 7 dwarfs, knocked on the door and called out, "Pretty wares at a good price." Well, Snow White peeked out of the window and said, "Go away, I can't let anyone in." "But you can at least take a look, dearie," said the old woman, and she took out the poisoned comb and held it up in the air. Well, the child liked it so much that she was completely fooled and opened the door. Do you know, I don't know about you, but honestly, these days, if you held a comb up to a kid and said, "Let me in, this is a really pretty comb," do you honestly think they give you the time of day? But I mean, is this going back like 600 years or something? Were people like more impressed with combs back then? I can't say I was impressed with combs when I was whatever age Snow White's meant to be, 7 or whatever. But never mind. I digress. Well, when they'd agreed on a good price, the old woman said, "Now I'll give your hair a good combing." Well, poor Snow White suspected nothing and let the woman go ahead. But no sooner had the comb touched her hair when the poison took effect and the girl fell senseless to the ground. "There, my beauty," said the wicked woman. "Now you're finished." And she rushed away. Fortunately, it was almost evening and the 7 dwarfs were on the way home. And when they saw Snow White lying on the ground as though dead, they suspected the stepmother right away. They examined Snow White and found the poison comb. And as soon as they pulled it out, Snow White came back to life and told them what had happened. Again they warned her to be on her guard and not to open the door to anyone. At home, the queen stood before the mirror and said, "Mirror, mirror on the wall, who's the fairest of them all?" And the mirror answered as before, "Oh, my God, here we go. Look, missus, here you're the fairest. You're the queen, right? You are the best in this here castle. But little Snow White, what lives far, far away, and she plans to stay with the 7 dwarfs, is now the fairest in the land. Yes, like she was the time before, and like she was the time before that." Well, when the queen heard the words from the mirror, she began trembling with rage. "Snow White must die," she cried out, "even if it costs me my life." God, she's a dramatic woman. Then she went into a remote hidden chamber where no one ever set foot and made an apple full of poison. And on the outside it looked beautiful, white with red cheeks. so that if you saw it, you longed for it. But anyone who took the tiniest bite would die. And when the apple was finished, she stained her face, dressed up as a peasant woman, and travelled beyond the 7 hills to the 7 Dwarfs' cottage. She knocked at the door, and Snow White put her head out of the window to say, "I can't let anyone in. The 7 Dwarfs won't allow it." "That's all right, dearie," replied the peasant woman. "I'll get rid of my apples soon enough. Here, I'll give you one." "No," said Snow White. "No, thank you. I'm not supposed to take anything." "Are you afraid that it's poisoned?" asked the old woman. "Here, I'll cut the apple in 2. You can eat the red part, and I'll eat the white part." Well, the apple had been made so artfully that only the red part of it was poisoned. Snow White felt a craving for the beautiful apple, and when she saw that the peasant woman was eating it, she could no longer resist. She put her hand out of the window and took the poisoned half. But no sooner had she taken a bite than she fell down on the ground dead. The queen stared at her with savage eyes and burst out laughing. "Wah, ha, 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 ha. White as snow, red as blood, black as ebony. This time the dwarfs will be able to bring you back to life." And at home she asked the mirror, "Mirror, mirror on the wall, who's the fairest of them all?" And finally it replied, "Oh, Queen, you are the fairest in the land." Her envious heart was finally at peace, as much as an envious heart can be. And when the little dwarfs returned home in the evening, they found Snow White lying on the ground. Not a breath of air was coming from her lips. She was dead. They lifted her up and looked around for something that might be poisonous. They unlaced her, combed her hair, washed her with water and wine, but it was all in vain. The dear child was dead, and nothing could bring her back. They placed her on a bier, and all 7 of them sat on it and mourned her. They wept for 3 days. They were about to bury her, but she still looked just like a living person with beautiful red cheeks. They said, "We can't possibly lower her into the dark ground." So they had a transparent glass coffin made that allowed Snow White to be seen from all sides. They put her in it, wrote her name on it in golden letters, and added that she was the daughter of a king. They brought the coffin up to the top of a mountain, and one of them was always there to keep vigil. Animals also came to mourn Snow White, first an owl, then a raven, and finally a dove. Snow White lay in the coffin for a long, long time, but she didn't decay and looked as if she was just sleeping, for she was still as white as snow, as red as blood, with hair as black as ebony. One day, the son of a king was travelling through the woods and arrived at the dwarf's cottage. He wanted to spend the night there, and on top of the mountain he saw the coffin with beautiful Snow White lying in it, and he read what had been written in gold letters. Then he said to the dwarfs, "Let me have the coffin. I'll give you whatever you want for it." The dwarfs answered, "We wouldn't sell it for all the gold in the world." And then he said, "Well, make me a present of it, 'cause I can't live without seeing Snow White. I will honour and cherish her as if she were my beloved." Well, the good dwarfs took pity on him when they heard these words, and they gave him the coffin. The prince ordered his servants to carry the coffin away on their shoulders, and it happened that they stumbled over a shrub, and the jolt freed the poisonous piece of apple lodged in Snow White's throat. She came to life. Good heavens, where am I? She cried out. The prince was overjoyed and said, You are with me. And he described what had happened and said, I love you more than anything on this earth. Come with me to my father's castle. You shall be my bride. But she was 7. We've obviously got this wrong. Snow White had tender feelings for him, and she departed with him. Their marriage was celebrated with great splendour. Snow White's wicked stepmother was also invited to the wedding feast. She put on beautiful clothes, stepped up to the mirror and said, Mirror, mirror on the wall, who's the fairest of them all? The mirror replied, My queen, you may be the fairest dear, but the young queen is 1,000 times better looking than you any time. The wicked woman let loose a curse, and she became so petrified with fear she didn't know what to do. At first she didn't want to go to the wedding feast, but she never had a moment's peace after that and had to go to see the young queen. And when she entered, Snow White recognised her right away. The queen was so terrified that she just stood there and couldn't budge an inch. Iron slippers had already been heated up over a fire of coals. They were brought in with tongs and set right in front of her. She had to put on the red-hot iron shoes and dance in them until she dropped down dead. And that is the end of that. So this is what happens when you go to poison people and, with combs and apples and whatever else, strangle people with bits of lace and things like that. This is what happens. They come along and the strap, big bits of iron, twisted, put it over a hot fire and make you dance with them on. Well, I don't know about you, but I couldn't lift my ankles if there was iron shoes on them. So I'd just have to sit there and burn. But that's just me. Anyway, we've gone over our time by about 7 minutes. So I don't have time this week to give you a second story, I'm afraid, because we're trying to stick to this half an hour thing. But anyway, that was your story about Snow White. I do hope you enjoyed it. Please let me know in the comments what you think about it. And please also let me know what you think about the live stream this coming Monday. And I want to thank you all for watching. I want to thank you all for being here. I want to thank you all for letting me read you that amazing story about a little kid who was 7 who ended up getting married, but who am I to judge? Anyway, I will see you again on Friday for our spooky sessions. And for the rest of you, if I don't see you before, I will see you on Monday for the live stream. And I do hope you come along and enjoy that too, because I really, really want to talk to all of you, if that's possible to get you all there. It would be brilliant. So I shall wish you a happy good night and take care. Love to you all. Bye-bye.